Hi, I'm Darcy from the Taylor Institute for Teaching and Learning, and I'm going to give a quick overview of the collaboration stations that we have here in the Learning Studios. So what we have is a 50-inch Panasonic touchscreen with a bunch of technology integrated so that it can serve a few functions here. When they're turned on in active learning mode, this classroom the studios have two modes. Presentation mode basically turns each of these displays into a mirror of what the instructor is showing on the big screen so they can present stuff. But the more interesting use is probably active learning mode, in which case these displays, these stations, will be configured. You can see around me often with a couple tables so students can actually sit around and work on stuff together and collaborate with the technologies in the cards. So what are in these stations? You turn it on and it gives you two basic buttons. It says press to start video session or press to start a local session. Now the video session lets you do a Skype for Business call, which will get things ready for you. And basically this is, by default, you can call any of the other collaboration stations in the building, so you could have classes spread all over this main floor with groups talking to each other. You could also be calling any other instructor, researcher, student on campus, because we all have access to Skype for Business. You can also call in external people, so you could have guest presenters, you could have people from other universities, other classes for businesses, whatever. So you could bring in and have video conferences. I don't think this is going to be used a lot because it can be kind of loud. We've got 37 of these carts in the building. This particular wing can have about 25 going. So if we have 25 video conference calls, that's a lot of chatter and noise. But it's there if we need it. We also have these apps. So it's got, I'll show a little bit more information in a second here, but basically we have a Windows embedded PC here so that we can run some apps. We can't install everything. It is kind of locked down, but we can install things like Google Chrome or Firefox. I'm just going to fire up Google Chrome. And let's restore the tabs from last session. So this is the Arrive embedded PC that actually runs the thing. So it's a small form factor embedded PC. It's actually up in our IT closet. We have about 40 of them or so. And it drives the functionality of the display. It drives this menu here that asks what you want to do with it. I will not do that. It also runs, in this case, Google Chrome. So this is a case study that Arrive, the vendor, did about the Taylor Institute's use, but this is actually handy diagrams. This shows basically what is happening. We have our collaboration station. In this case, it's a 50-inch Panasonic screen driven by this FacePoint processor that lets us do some things. So we can do that. We've used it for things like digital poster sessions. We've used it for our conferences. It's been used in a lot of classes already. We've had an English literature course taught in here, and they're using it for both presentation mode, the instructor showing the stuff they're doing, but also students are breaking off into groups and collaborating, looking at manuscripts, that kind of thing. So it's got Google Chrome. That's exciting. We can also, we've got shortcuts to the Lindsay Virtual Human project, which is pretty cool. It's a 3D human anatomy viewer. We also have a whiteboard app. So that may sound counterintuitive. We have physical whiteboards all through the building, but we also have this whiteboard app. This is currently using limnu.com, and it just turns the screen into a whiteboard. So I can doodle, I can, whatever you're going to do. One thing you'll notice in the background, I've got this currently, station 16 is set to push its display to every display in this studio. So students don't have to crowd around the display. They don't have to squint to see it on the big screen at the far end. They can just look at their local display and see what we're doing on the whiteboard. So it's really good. Students can break off in their own groups. The instructor can then go to the Crestron panel at the front of the room and say, group 16 is doing cool work. Everyone needs to check this out. They push the button on the Crestron. Everybody gets to see it. So you could do formulas H2SO4, blah, blah, blah. You can also pan and zoom. So if I want to zoom in, do some detail, I can zoom out, I can pan. So that's kind of handy. Because it is web-based as well, I can then go and share it. And I can actually add collaborators using their email addresses or send the link so anybody can actually see the thing or edit after the session. It's very handy. It's not as easy to do that with a physical whiteboard. So we're still kind of playing around with that. Big fan of Limnu. We've used it for a bunch of stuff internally as well. Probably the other major thing this thing can do is called the present media mode, in which case this is now firing up it's a product called a Solstice Pod by Mersive, and it gives you basically a login. So I'm going to pull up my laptop, and what you can do with this is have a bunch of students at a table. They're collaborating on documents, whatever, and so from my laptop, I'm going to share, and it gives you options. You can share your desktop, an app window, or a media file. I'm going to share an app window. In this case, here's BBEdit. And it just takes a second. BBEdit with some source code from, this is actually a WordPress theme file, so you can do that. Again, because this screen is being pushed to all the displays in the studio, students at other stations can actually read the small source code there. I'm going to share another app window. So one of the nice things about this is you don't have to share your entire desktop. So you don't, often when you're sharing things in your whole desktop, you've got notifications, you've got email, you don't want to have everything up. Here you can have multiple windows from one desktop without exposing everything. It also gives an admin interface, so you can say, well, let's focus on the BBEdit code for now. Let's push, maybe we're done with that, and let's focus on this. This is the web page actually for Mersive, for the Solstice Pod that we're dealing with. And it works, I think, really, really well. Another thing we can do, let's try, see if the demo gods are smiling here. I'm going to try connecting from my phone to the same screen. Where did I put the thing? There we go. So it's got an app for iOS, for Android, for Mac and Windows. So basically whatever platform you're on, it's like an Apple TV on steroids. So I just have 10.145 dot. And I just have to pause for a second because the IP address down at the .98.38. And it has an access code so people don't just randomly grief, because if someone sees this recording, they might say, hey, I'm going to type in as well. JY44 is the screen key. So now it should show at the bottom here, my phone has joined, and I can push things like a media file. So I'm going to pick a photo from the atrium. We were just showing a bunch of project-based learning projects from a workshop yesterday. So we can do that. I can say, well, let's look at only that. But it gets more interesting because I can now turn on AirPlay and mirror my entire screen. So while I may not want to do that all the time, I can then use whatever software I want. Actually, let's make the, I'm going to make the iPhone display go full screen. There we go. And then you can do things like turning on the camera app, which turns every display in the studio now into a wireless video recorder. So we can do, if we have students doing presentations or performances, they can actually be documenting and sharing that as they're doing it. So using the software in whatever device students are bringing to turn these displays into whatever they need. So that's the major functionality. We've been trying a bunch of stuff with these collaboration displays. Really, we have no idea what people are going to actually be using them for. The whole point is let's provide some basic functionality, and let's see what they come up with. We've had English Lit in here. We've had Shakespeare on the screen in our major forum room, and they've got everything like students collaborating on Google Docs and doing Twitter streams and Wikipedia documents. And that's the quick tour. So come play.